to the recording and just click on got it. Okay, so welcome everybody. Welcome to Conquer the Fear of Public Speaking. So this program is a part of our Toastmasters Communication and Leadership series. So we're very excited about that. It's great that Toastmasters was able to actually create a bunch of programs for us and host these programs for us. This program is actually being sponsored by the District 8 Toastmasters in Eastern Missouri and Southwestern Illinois. So here are some upcoming Toastmasters programs that we have. So check these out. And if you are interested, you can definitely go to attend.mylibrary.org and register. You can also give us a call. You can come in and see our beautiful faces and sign up, whatever you would like to do. Also, just as a little housekeeping with Zoom, I know we're all probably used to Zoom at this point, but this is just a reminder. If you want to send a question in or send a comment in, you can definitely use the chat. It's usually at the bottom of your screen, depending, what device you're using. It's usually on the bottom of your screen, so just click chat and go ahead and put in your question or comments. We do ask that you keep your microphone turned off unless you have a question. When you have a question, I think Cathy is fine if you unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question, that's fine. But we just ask that you keep it off if you're not talking. We don't want background noises or any weird feedback or anything. The video is up to you. If you want to keep it on, that's fine. If not, that's fine too. You are being recorded again, so just keep that in mind. I do want to introduce our speaker. Our speaker today is Cathy Swanson. She is an adult services librarian over at the Middendorf-Cradell branch with the St. Charles City County Library. She's an active member of the Cave Springs Toastmaster Club and has achieved the Advanced Toastmasters Gold Award. So that means she has presented over 48 speeches that were evaluated by other Toastmasters. Cathy has presented many training sessions for other library staff and taught classes to the public during her 26 years as a librarian. She is concerned about how people with important messages to share sometimes get too afraid to speak. It is especially important that we communicate clearly in this challenging time of the COVID-19 virus. Please join me in welcoming Cathy as she presents Conquer the Fear of Public Speaking.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for attending. It's so good to see you, even though it's virtual. Are you afraid to get up in front of a group in person to speak? Or maybe you're afraid to talk in front of a group via Zoom or some other virtual platform. No matter what, if you have some fear of public speaking, I think what I have to share with you today will be helpful. And I certainly hope that you can too conquer the fear of public speaking. Now I need to share my screen. I'm going to do this in 3 parts. Somehow the thing that I had planned to show up is not here. So I'm going to have to, oh, there it is. That's what I want to share. Okay. What we want to do is start at the beginning. My presentation has 3 sections. The first is the face the fear. And we will talk about how you can face fear, not just of public speaking, but this stuff may apply to some other fears in your life as well. Then one of the things that you need to do to really face that fear of public speaking and overcome it is to give speeches. So I'm going to give you tips as to how you can do that in a way that you will lessen the amount of anxiety that might come up. And finally, the last part will be giving you resources so that you can continue to learn about this. And I will welcome any questions at the end of each section, but if you have a question that just comes up as I speak, that's okay too, because we do have a small group and I want to make sure that you learn what's most important for you. Franklin Delano Roosevelt stated in his inaugural address, "There is nothing to fear but fear itself." We all actually do have the power to transform that fear so that instead of being all nervous like that, that you can have the feeling of exhilaration. One of the first things I encourage you to do, and what has helped me a great deal, is to ask for help. When you have a speech to give, if you have somebody that can mentor you with that, that's the ideal situation. And we do have mentors in Toastmasters. Sometimes you just need help on a little portion of it. But if you're really new to public speaking, I encourage you to get somebody to help you with at least the first 3 speeches. And my first experience at getting help with the speech was simply asking the teacher that I had. My first speech that I can remember was when I was 13 years old. And I asked that teacher, she asked me to do it. And I said, "Oh, I'm too afraid." And she said, "Well, I'll help you." And I said, yes, I'll try that. And she did let me practice with her, and it turned out okay. So what you can do is list the fears, write down exactly what it is that you're afraid of, getting specific, and make that as thorough as you can. Ask yourself, well, why do I have this fear? And write down the answer to that until you feel like you've got to the root fear, and then find somebody that you can talk to about that. I have shared some of my fears even of public speaking with people that don't know much about public speaking, but simply because I trust them a lot. But also when you talk to somebody who's had that same experience, then you can get a different perspective. If they can, and changing your perspective about these things really can help. And it happens to me, at least, and a lot of us in Toastmasters is a gradual process. So don't have expectations that it's like, woo, from one point in life where you're really afraid to one where everything's just so easy. It takes time, and you need to take one step at a time. Now, I'm not a doctor, and there are some people who have social anxiety disorder. If you think you might have that, I suggest you see your doctor. But if you're, I'm not so sure, there's a website that I recommend, mayoclinic.org. And I actually did some research for this speech by going there and searching fear of public speaking. And they mentioned that some people do have social anxiety disorder, but there are solutions for that, but not something that I can share. So let's look at some of those. I asked myself, well, what are the 3 worst fears that I've had? And I'll talk to you about my personal experience here a little bit. The audience might not like me. The equipment might not work, and I might make a mistake. Is there anybody here that can relate to that? I bet there's quite a few. Let's look at each of those. Facing the fear about the audience. Well, the truth is, and here's an opportunity to consider to change your perspective if you are afraid of the audience. Most people are really not going to make you feel bad about yourself. The audience is generally there to learn things or to be entertained, or maybe do both at the same time. Also, if you can change your attitude, if you have an attitude that's really afraid of the audience, to one that's focused on what do they need? What is so important to that audience that I can be of service to them by telling them about? So if you can focus on them instead of yourself, it'll be so much easier. Finally, keep in mind that people love to laugh. If you can throw in a joke or some humorous experience that you've had in your speech, that'll help you to relax, and it'll help the audience to relax as well. Knowledge is power. If you are going to an audience that's unfamiliar to you, it's important to get what information you can about that audience. For example, find out what the size of the group is. Are they mostly men or women? Or are they older, like maybe senior citizens mostly? Or are they millennials? Just get a feel. Sometimes it's a mixture of all sorts of ages and both male and female, but just find out what you can and do see how much they know about the topic, if that's possible. Now, some of this you won't be able to know, but these are ideas of things that you can ask. Then there's that fear that the equipment might fail. When it's possible, go to that place where you are going to speak in advance so you can look around and see if there's any obstacles to like where you might be standing that you don't want to fall while you're speaking, like if you're on stage. And if they have equipment that you will be using, such as a microphone, test that a microphone out. Maybe you need to bring your computer to see if it will connect in with what they have for projecting. And sometimes just knowing a little bit about the place, this is a little bit outside the topic of equipment may fail, but it just flashed through my mind that one of the fears I had before I gave a speech at a conference, what came up when somebody said, "Oh, you're going to be speaking in a bar." And I thought, oh man, that makes me kind of concerned about the audience because some of them might be drunk. Well, it turns out I checked into it and it turned out there was a bar in the back of the room, but no liquor was being served. It was a morning presentation after all. The bar stuff was just a convenient place where we could have the meeting and no activity within the bar was happening. Anyway, back to the equipment thing, have an alternate plan in case the equipment does fail. I brought with me today the library hotspot so that if by chance, like it happened yesterday, we lose the internet for a few hours, and it happened, if it was now, then I would have another plan to how I could still connect in. And then of course, it's really important to have knowledge of who you can turn to for technical help. One time I went to a Toastmasters International convention, I think it was in Cincinnati in 2013. And the president of Toastmasters International had a problem with the equipment. There was a huge group of us, people around the world, who were going to be voting on new equipment. The equipment was not working. So he found it got people to work on it right away. There was technical help, but it takes time to solve some of those problems. So the other thing to think about is if you have major technical problems, what do you do with the audience? Well, he turned on music and said, "Let's dance." And so we got up to that song, "Celebrate, Celebrate," listen to the music, and people were dancing and having a great time. If he didn't do that, we would have been bored probably and not a happy group, but we were pretty happy when we sat back down and the equipment did work. Now, facing that fear of making a mistake, what I suggest is have that attitude that mistakes are learning opportunities. Many famous people have had to do things that are really not that easy to do over and over again, learning from one mistake to another. Thomas Edison, for example. So whenever you make a mistake, it's not that big a deal. Just try not to make the same one again. Sometimes the mistakes that I have made in speeches is simply not sharing something that I intended to say. So with that kind of thing, a lot of the times what I was going to say isn't really that important. So I need to let it go. And I suggest you do that also. But there may be some mistakes that are important to correct. Like, for example, if you're stating a statistic and that statistic is important to your argument that you're making, it's important to say, "Oh, I forgot. This is the accurate information. Let's just backtrack and correct it." And of course, remember, sometimes the things we do that are mistakes are funny. So just go ahead and laugh and let the audience laugh with you. They will be laughing with you, not at you. Now that's the end of my first section. Does anybody have any questions or any comments? Okay, well, what I'm going to do next is move along to selecting the topic. This is the first thing with doing a speech, and sometimes that topic is selected for you. In that case, and actually anytime, it's important to think about what does the audience really need to hear? What is their core message that I can present to them? And think about also when you have a choice of topics, what is it that you have a strong passion for? What is it that you know how to do well? Those kinds of things are going to be good topics for you to give a speech on. Also, keep in mind how much time you have to present, because sometimes I come up with a topic that is too large and I have to narrow it down. And then there will be other times when I have a topic that maybe is too broad, just the opposite. So if it's too narrow, you can broaden it. Like, for example, this public speaking thing that I'm doing now, talking about overcoming the fear of public speaking. I'm not giving you all the tips, about every situation with public speaking, just enough that I think will help you to alleviate that fear. Then it's time to begin to prepare your speech. I suggest you write down all your thoughts about the topic that you're going to talk about in whatever comfortable format you have. But then from those thoughts, create a beginning and a conclusion and have those two tie together. And then start writing the body of your speech and try to make it flow logically. Don't try to memorize it and don't read it. But you can memorize the beginning, the conclusion, and the introduction. It's just the in-between stuff that is important to just let it flow more naturally. And again, time is of importance. Make sure that you do the best you can to not commit to give some speech when you don't have enough time to prepare for it and to practice. Now, some people wonder, well, how many times should I practice my speech? Well, that really varies from one situation and individual to another. However, from the materials that I read and from my own personal experience, I find that one should practice it at least 5 times when it's possible. And if you can, practice it with an audience before you give the real speech, that would be best. And then practice it in the place where you are going to speak. If you can. Sometimes that's not possible, especially with the in-person stuff. But with Zoom, like, for example, this presentation I'm giving, I did a practice one and then I watched myself. So if you can make a video of what you're speaking on, and then learn from it by watching it later, that'll help you feel more relaxed when you do it for real. No matter what, when you give a speech, there's a good possibility that there will be some sort of distraction. So if you can keep in mind to expect that might happen, and think a little bit about what you might do with some of the things that could happen, that have happened, such as speaking and then all of a sudden you hear thunder, or somebody's cell phone's ringing in the audience. You can respond to those things with humor, like, hey, is that call for me? Tell them I'm giving an interesting speech and wish they were here. Or you can ignore it. But another thought is, do not take it personally. One distraction could be people leaving the room when you're still speaking. If that happens, then just figure that, well, they had something they really had to take care of. Sometimes people can only listen to part of a presentation instead of the entire thing. So don't take it personally. Here are some tips for things you can do before getting up in front of a group to talk. If you can do some light exercises, that can help you relax. And then arrive early, but make sure that you're wearing something that's comfortable yet professional. Get familiar with that speaking area. That way, if you have things like a handout to give to people, you can get that ready in advance and do, as I say, not as I did today, have your first slide ready so that you can see. I'm laughing at my mistake in the beginning. As you might remember, I messed up a little bit with having my practice slideshow instead of my first one. And then if you can, talk with the individuals in the audience to some extent in advance, so you can get a feel for why they might be there, and therefore make sure that you can do what you can to help them best of your ability with having that knowledge. Now, it's also wise if you can do something relaxing just before you speak, like maybe if you're driving to a location to give a speech, you can play some music that you enjoy to help you just let go and relax. You can also visualize yourself speaking very confidently, or perhaps if you're really nervous, visualize yourself doing something very relaxing, like taking a hot bath or being on the beach in a hammock. And finally, take a couple of deep breaths just before you give your presentation. After your speech, do what you can to get feedback from the audience, especially if you had a mentor watching your speech, get some feedback from that mentor. And if you did have the opportunity to record it or video it, watch that. And it's suggested. Now, this is a little bit more of an advanced suggestion, so don't feel like you have to do this, but do watch it if you can multiple times. Once focusing on your voice. What is your pitch, your pace, your pauses, and your tone of voice? Were they all appropriate? And then watch it again, focusing on your gestures, your expressions, your body movements. And finally, focus on how relaxed and welcoming you were as a speaker. And next, do take notes on lessons learned from these experiences and schedule yourself for another speech, because this is one of these things where the more you practice it, the easier it gets. Now that I open it up for questions and comments, anybody have anything they want to share or ask? Well, let me just close this part with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "All great speakers were bad speakers at first." I really do believe that you too can conquer the fear of public speaking and become a great speaker. Okay, well, let me ask again. Does anybody have any questions or comments before I go on to talk about resources?
Yeah, that
Okay.
was really good.
Oh, great. I'm glad to hear that.
I learned some new tips and things like that. That was really nice. I liked it. That was very good.
Good, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's helpful to bribe your audience with candy too. Just saying that. I do that a lot when I give classes.
I have a few cough drops here. Anybody want them? Yeah, I've been one of those people that would bring candy a few times in person. It is kind of fun. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and talk about further resources. Our library, of course, surprise, surprise. Here's this librarian encouraging you to use the library. So mylibrary.org is our website. And down here in this little search box, if you do a search, that'll take you to our catalog. You can also go here to our catalog and you can find books, DVDs, and other formats. However, what some people don't know is that you can actually click that down arrow and select magazines, articles, and ebooks, and you could do a search for articles on your topic, which in this case would be terms like fear of public speaking. One of the resources we have that a lot of people aren't aware of that I think is a very useful tool and it helped me prepare for this presentation is LinkedIn Learning. You can go from our library's webpage to eLibrary and then electronic resources A to Z. And from that list, you go to the OWLs and go to LinkedIn Learning, click Get Started, and it's going to ask you for your library card number and PIN number. And I just listed here the name of the one that I watched that gave me a lot of information to help prepare for this speech, Overcome Your Fear of Public Speaking. And of course, Toastmasters International. This is a fantastic organization for becoming a better speaker and leader. I have the link here to the article on public speaking tips to help yourself prepare for speech. The better prepared you are, the less nervous I think you will be. And you can find a club that's close to you if you would like by going to toastmasters.org and then find a club. But each Toastmasters club belongs to a district, and I belong to District 8. They are sponsoring this event, and there is their website, and there's an email you can email questions to about Toastmasters. What I'm going to do after a little bit, I'm going to put into the chat these things so that if you wanted to copy and paste them, you can. And finally, the Toastmasters Club that I am a member of is Cave Springs Toastmasters. And they meet both virtually. It's a hybrid meeting, meaning that you can be on Zoom and you can be in person, whichever works best for you. And that's our time and where we're meeting, the ambulance district in St. Peter's. And that's our current Zoom Zoom link and password. However, I suggest you might want to just Google Cave Springs Toastmasters Club, just in case, if you want to be our guest, be my guest. And you can find out for sure what the link is and just click that way. So I'm now going to stop sharing this and put into the chat what I promised that I was going to share with you. And anybody have any questions? Okay, well, I'm just going to try as much as I can to put these in the chat. Maybe what I can do is stop the recording and then you will have more questions. So first of all, in case somebody watching the recording wants these, I'm going to start putting in the resources. Okay. So there's the, when I mentioned earlier, the Mayo Clinic is a good source if you wanted to more of the medical perspective of overcoming the fear of public speaking. And then these are the steps to get to LinkedIn Learning, Toastmasters International, and the District 8 Toastmasters Club. So you can copy and paste those from the chat if you need to. Any more questions before I stop the recording? I know some people in the past experiences I've had with library programs is they don't want to talk too much while the recording's on. So I'm going to very soon stop the recording.